I am a political scientist by training, specialising in Middle East politics. I was a lecturer at the University of Melbourne here in Australia. I was focused on the Arab Gulf states, and I wrote my PhD on Bahrain and the Shia communities in the Gulf. I was invited to come to Iran by an Iranian university as part of that scholarly expertise to attend a conference or a seminar held in Tehran and Qom. This was a one-week program. It was an opportunity to meet other scholars and other academics in my field, and the trip was supported by my university, funded by my university, and quite an extensive travel assessment is conducted by the university, particularly obtaining ethics approval for your research, making sure that you're not endangering anybody else that you might speak to in that country as well. So I passed this process of a number of months of different stages of, it was an approval of my trip. I visited Tehran and Qom as part of this university conference program. I had a wonderful time in that 1 week in Iran and extended my stay by an additional week to do some sightseeing and to experience the country. And then following that, I did a bit of a tour around Iran. So I went to Yazd, Kashan, Shiraz, Isfahan, Persepolis, the usual tourist destinations in Iran, and I had a great time. There was nothing unusual during the tourism aspect of my trip, but in retrospect, looking back, there were some unusual aspects of the university program that I did. They came to my hotel twice, but I wasn't there both times, and I didn't know who they were. All I knew was that the reception of the hotel told me that some men had come looking for me. Also, the hotel said, "Oh, it's probably the tourist police," and I didn't know what that meant, and I said, "What's tourist police? What do they want? Why would they be looking for me?" So I had this doubt in my mind. I thought, okay, maybe they're checking my credentials, maybe they want to see my passport or something. I didn't know that it was as serious as it was, but I do know that people came to my hotel looking for me prior to my going to the airport and checking into my flight. I checked in for my flight at the airport in Tehran, and the steward of Emirates, who gave me my boarding pass, acted a little bit strangely, and I noticed that he took my baggage off the carousel after I'd waited and given it to him. And I actually asked him, "What are you doing? Why are you taking my bags off and not sending them through?" And he said, "Oh, they're a bit fragile or a bit heavy or something, so this is just what we do." And I remember thinking that was really strange and that his behaviour was quite odd, and I actually think there must have been a red flag against my name in the system. I checked in for my flight, got my boarding pass and headed toward passport control. As I was queuing for passport control, that a group of men clad in black approached me, manoeuvred me away from that queue and said, "Madam, we have a warrant for your arrest, you must come with us." And they showed me a piece of paper, just an A4 page, looked like it had been printed up on Microsoft Word or something, everything in Farsi, no stamp, nothing official on it, claiming that this piece of paper was an arrest warrant. Because I didn't speak Farsi, I had no idea what it said. It didn't look official to me, and I wasn't even sure who these people were because they didn't wear a uniform. They showed me no license. There was no badge, nothing. I didn't know if they were some sort of gang, potentially. They didn't seem to be the security services or the police, but I went with them. They took me to an interrogation room in the airport and interrogated me for quite a long period of time. I'd missed my flight at that point. Fairly late into the night, I stayed in that room, and they asked me all sorts of random questions about my background, why I was visiting Iran, my job in Australia, my travels in the Middle East, my PhD, these kinds of things. They brought me from the airport interrogation room into a van with blacked out windows, and I had a female guard to sit on either side of me, and I was in the middle back seat. And this car first drove to an apartment building in North Tehran. I had to cover my eyes, or I had to put my head between my legs for the final stretch so I wouldn't see the outside of the building. We went up in an elevator from the parking lot, and it was clearly somebody's apartment that had a film studio actually set up inside it. And they interrogated me throughout the night in that apartment. They also filmed me with a handheld camera at various times of that interrogation as well. Then that next morning, I was taken to a hotel called the Ideal Hotel, and I was imprisoned essentially in a hotel room there for 1 week, and would interrogate me again and again, often the same questions again and again. They didn't have any information about me. They didn't have enough to even accuse me of something at this point. They didn't know if I was a significant person for them or not. This is when they discovered my ex-husband had an Israeli passport. This is when they discovered that I traveled to Israel in the course of my research. And I traveled to other Arab countries of interest to them, like Bahrain as well. They discovered that I was a dual national, a citizen of the UK. So they picked up all sorts of threads and narratives by going through my emails and by interrogating me that enabled them to build this broader picture of how they could create this parvandesazi and put me in front of a court and convict me of something, and use me as a hostage ultimately in the end too. They did very sort of openly ask me a few times about this issue of recruitment and potentially gathering information for them outside Iran's borders. And they had quite a lot of interest in UK universities, the School of Oriental and African Studies in London in particular for some reason, and wanted to know about any ties or links that I might have academically to those universities too. They said to me, would you be open to making a trip to the UK on our behalf and meeting certain contacts in UK universities for us? Would you be open to cooperating with us outside the country? This kind of thing they said to me. And I largely played the fool and pretended I didn't understand their meaning because I didn't really know how to respond to that. They transferred me to Evin prison without telling me where I was going. I was taken to the administrative wing of Evin initially, to Bozparsi. This was the administrative process of admitting me into Evin prison, but I was actually really upset. I started crying. I was crying so much I was kicked out of the Bozpars room and taken to the Dualif unit. I was taken to a very small infiradi cell, no natural light, no window, nothing. And they'd given me the prison uniform and closed the door. Looking back, I think that Ghazizadeh had an interest in me from the very beginning of my arrest. He came to my hotel room when I was imprisoned in the hotel for 1 week at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, alone, after all the interrogators had left. and banged on the door and wanted me to let him in, but I refused to open the door. I could see him through the little peephole, and I said through the door, "What do you want?" And he said, "Oh, I just want to come talk to you. I've brought these English newspapers as a gift. I want to give you these newspapers." I was completely under his control. Every aspect of my life in Dua Lif was under his control. Whether or not I had a toothbrush, whether or not I had food to eat, was under his control. And there was an abusive aspect to this, manipulative aspect, sort of coercive control aspect. He was clearly interested in me from a more romantic perspective, and I was powerless to do anything about it. I was treading a very fine line between not wanting to completely reject him outright and make my situation very bad for myself, but obviously not wanting to give him too much encouragement either, being afraid of, where that might lead. He had put his wife into Dua Lif as a prison guard, and it became obvious to me that she was his wife and that she was jealous and monitoring me and him, and was making my life really difficult. She was punishing me often. Ultimately, he was removed from my case as a result of this interest in me. Worst of the romantic interaction and harassment took place throughout 2020 over a period of about 8 months.